Hi,
Hi, Johnny Sauce.
Stacey Sauce. You're so cute.
Oh my God, I miss you so much.
I miss you.
Look at you in your Michigan vest.
Look at your bow. Oh my goodness. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. Considering,
Considering
I feel
everything.
guilty saying when I'm in a good mood because I know everyone's always in a bad mood.
I'm ready to get rolling on the podcast, but I just wanted to make sure that before we started, like, there was anything you wanted to like check in about.
No, I feel like I'll probably regret most of the things I say, but I'm not afraid to say them.
Yay! Okay, well, cool. Then I guess we could just say we're rolling.
Rolling.
Oh, Stacey. So Stacey is in Amsterdam right now on this call, and she's a performer at Boom Chicago, baby.
I can't get rid of Chicago.
Yeah, that's right. How long have you been there now, Stacey?
I've been here for over a year now. It was a year last week. Literally a year and a week.
Wow.
Which is insane because most of it's been COVID. So it's been like,
yeah.
It's kind of gone really slowly and also gone really, really fast.
Huh. Did you guys think that you were going to stay at the beginning of COVID? Did you know that you were in Amsterdam for?
I mean, the whole thing, we didn't ever know that we would stay longer than 3 months because when I had agreed to do a contract, I only signed for a 3-month contract because
really?
I was going to stay as long as I could stay without getting a visa. And you could stay you could stay as a tourist for 3 months because Matt came with me. And at the time he was not hired by Boom Chicago. I came with him. And so he was just kind of doing stand up and bouncing around. So basically we were going to stay for 3 months. And then after like the second month, Matt joined the cast. And then we're like, all right, we'll stay a little longer. And then we had signed to July. And then in March, everything shut down. Yeah. And then as soon as we opened, we signed. We're staying all of next year.
Okay.
I mean, there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, that's right. Would you even be allowed back if you wanted to come back right now?
Yeah, we of course. I mean, we're American citizens. I hope so. And I would even I could technically go to the United States and come back because I actually have residency here through 2022. I have a resident card.
Oh, sweet.
But yeah, the thought of going on a plane, I mean, I don't like to fly anyways. So the thought of going on a plane right now, that's honestly been the greatest thing about COVID is I don't have to get on a plane because I think in 2019, I traveled probably, I would say 20 of the 52 weeks.
Holy cow.
I was away a lot in 2019 and I hate flying. So I'm so happy.
Are you just afraid of it?
Place. And not that it's I don't think anything's gonna happen. I just don't like the way it makes me feel. If the plane moves, I don't like it.
And they generally move.
And they move so much.
Okay, Stacey. So I have to get into how it is doing Boom Chicago with you and how it is being in Amsterdam, because I feel like both of those things are like a dream. Getting to do comedy.
I mean, Amsterdam, hands down, is such a dream. And you've been to Germany a lot because you're so in love with Germany.
So in love with Germany. And I was in Amsterdam, not this past summer, but the summer before, and visited Boom while I was there. And Matt and I were just quickly there on our honeymoon. So we got to get a little taste of the city very quick.
Oh my gosh. It's unbelievable. It's there's just no season that you can hate.
Oh, really?
Even on the darkest, rainiest day, and it does rain quite often, but the city is so pretty that it almost just feels like it's romantic that it rains.
Yeah.
There's no, it doesn't get colder than 35 degrees, really. There's not that much snow, which is I missed that last winter. I was like, oh, I'm ice skating, but there's no snow. Because I really, really love snow a lot. But and I mean, you're an outdoorsy cyclist, but like
Yeah.
I cycled the first year I was in Chicago. And as soon as my first bike was stolen, I was like, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm too scared. Like, it's not worth it. And I
You're
didn't
scared of
cycle
getting
for
your bike stolen?
yeah, I just hated the way it made me feel.
Yeah.
I felt so violated. I couldn't get over it. And I was like, why are people so mean?
Also, like, that's probably the least of your fears because, like, dying is probably more probable than
Yeah, exactly.
anything
But
else.
here, it's like it's more probable that you get in a car accident or die as a pedestrian from a bike because bikers run the world
Yeah.
here. And
Yes.
so when I first moved here, when even as a pedestrian, I was too afraid of the bikers. So I didn't ride probably until maybe February. So the first few months I took the tram and I really like taking the tram because it's the same thing I feel about the L in Chicago that it's kind of my only downtime ever. So it's like when I kind of stay calm and like read a little or catch up on the phone. But now I cycle everywhere. Like I've made a goal that
Yes.
all winter, unless I absolutely had to take public transportation, I would cycle every single day that I was
Do
here.
you feel like you do it out of necessity, or do you feel like you're like also loving it?
Oh, I also love it.
It's
Yeah.
great, isn't
Just
it?
the oh my gosh, I can't believe no one told me.
It's like such a freeing feeling to like be on a bike, and
It's
like if you dress
unbelievable.
the right way in the weather, it's not the end of the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. I mean,
Depending on how far you're
really, as
going.
long as I got some gloves and my ears are
Yeah, yeah.
covered, I could do anything.
I love it.
Yeah, I love Amsterdam big time.
That
I like just the country in general. The Netherlands is fascinatingly beautiful. Like Matt and I have done a bunch of. It's really easy to do day trips because it's such a small country. So I've been all over the country and I've done like a lot of corporate stuff and workshops, kind of all over the country. And like every single city has like a castle
I know,
and
right?
like sheep, and it's like it's just breathtaking. It just feels so different because, you go around in the United States and you're like, this is our oldest building from 1970. And like in Amsterdam, it's like, here's our building from the year 13. Like it's
Yeah,
just so old.
it's amazing. Um,
Yeah.
so are you what has it been like with the lockdown in Amsterdam? Because I feel like I saw you were doing a bunch of shows still this summer.
Yeah, so we were formally closed from March to mid-June pretty much. Like not going to the theater at all. Like I stepped foot in the theater I think 3 times during that time, and it was because Matt and I were doing these live stream shows, these 3 like short form live stream shows.
How did you feel about
Because
those?
would you say?
How did you feel about those?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a real learning curve, and
Yeah.
at that point in April, so early on, we didn't really know what we were doing. I feel like I'm much better suited with anything online now because I'm so used to
Yeah.
it. But yeah, I mean, they were well received, and a lot of people
Oh,
watched
that's good.
them, so that was good. And then mid-June, they started opening up slowly. Because the interesting thing about the Netherlands is they do
They
like every
respected
2
COVID
weeks.
and they planned for
Yeah.
took safety
But
precautions and
they
planned.
do everything based on science. So every 2 weeks they make
What a
new rules
novelty.
based on numbers. So it's really interesting. So June we started teaching again because you could have groups of 30 and
Dang.
we have 14 in our classes. And then we opened shows 4th of July weekend. But since then we've opened and closed and
Yeah.
opened and closed
So they're just always
because
taking it case by case.
yeah, exactly. So if there are high numbers, then we closed for maybe a few weeks in October and just reopened again this week. We were closed for 2 weeks. Yeah,
Okay.
it's very strange. It's like such a roller coaster, but I run the Boom Academy, which is our training center. I
Yeah.
mean, you know me, I'm not going to go to another country and not
Not run
run
a
the
training
whole
center.
thing.
Yeah.
And we have a really nice, small, close knit community. We've got like about 80 students, and they just come to everything. Like, we built community shows. So it was the first time Boom Chicago has ever had kind of like student based programming. So I came in and kind of they were like, "We just need someone to schedule the classes." And I was like, "That's not gonna work for me." Like, we're gonna do a lot of different things now. So it's really exciting because we just have like such incredible students, and they're international. They're from everywhere. They're from
Ah,
all like every single one of my classes is like representing like at least 5 or 6 different countries.
that's amazing.
And I mean, I find that so much more enjoyable as a teacher because I'm actually learning as a teacher. And I feel like there was a long period of time where I was kind of just doing the same thing because I
Yep.
was teaching the same curriculum at Second City and at IO and comedy sports.
Yep.
And so I'm teaching a curriculum right now that I was unfamiliar with. So that was a big learning curve. And then also teaching a ton of international groups. So yeah,
I
I love it, love it, love it.
I was wondering to get your perspective on this because when I was teaching a couple workshops in Europe
Yeah.
and in Amsterdam, like I was trying to, and I did a couple shows and saw a couple improv shows. I was trying to put my
Mhm.
finger on what was so different about it,
So
and
different.
I think maybe it's that, and I'll get your perspective because you'll be better versed in this. Is that they're mimicking theater more than they're mimicking sketch comedy, where maybe
Yes.
in the U.S. we're mimicking sketch comedy more than we're mimicking theater.
Yeah, and I also think that like Americans are just much more referential players, whereas
Okay.
a lot of European performers rely so much more on theatrical background,
Yeah.
emotion, and like mime and clowning. Like they don't talk nearly as much. Americans and English improvisers, I mean, just don't ever shut up, ever. And I'm so guilty of that. But
Oh, myself
it's
as
really
well.
interesting because, especially because so many of my international students are, and many of the people you probably saw, English is not their first language.
Yeah.
So they go so much slower because English isn't their first language. I
Yeah.
wish we could take a note out of that book. But I think it's really interesting. Like German improv, I thought everyone was just like so direct and so harsh
That's
and
just how
like
they are
so
in their everyday life. They're
it was
so
so
direct.
funny. But Dutch is quite the same. Dutch folks are quite direct and they will say exactly what they're feeling, which is really nice for like beginning level classes when you want people to like be aware and notice
Oh
things.
yeah.
Like they definitely notice everything. But then I have like a lot of students like from Spain or just Spanish speaking countries, and they are like, oh my God, just nothing but heart, like love and
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
family and
yeah.
relationship.
That
So
makes
it
so
is
much sense.
fascinating. Yeah.
Interesting. It's funny because the thing that it sounds like Europeans are doing well is like the thing that we're always correcting before. Do you feel like, like we're trying to get people to be like, oh, like take it seriously, like play from the heart, act. Do you feel like conversely, like Europeans, you're like, hey, you got to punch it up and find the funny?
Yeah, I have to like inject like 100% more joy because so many of the cultures that I teach, they just don't have that. Like I had a Polish woman in my class and I was like, "You like have fun." And she's like, "We just don't really have fun where I'm from." And like especially as a woman, when I'm always
Oh,
like told no, like it's kind of hard to tap into that if I don't know it regularly.
yeah.
And like that's so fucking sad.
Yeah, it's so
Um,
sad.
but also like a huge learning curve because I think then what is really, really nice for them is I always tell all my students, like, this is a two-part class. The class is your lecture and seeing shows is your lab. And I think because they see our shows and see how much joy we have,
Yeah.
it kind of helps them tap into that joy because they have something to reference, which is really nice. I just also find it fascinating. Like I've been teaching a lot of students that are in India recently,
Oh,
and
interesting.
they were saying like when we watch American improv, like we don't understand it because there's just so many things that you're saying that are like specific to where you're from that it doesn't translate to us.
Yeah.
And so one thing I've been really trying to focus on since I've been teaching internationally maybe like 5 years is trying to teach people to be like universally funny. So like
Yes.
to find ways that they don't rely so much on that reference and it's more specifics than reference. It's more like going down the rabbit hole of being super specific of your point of view and like ranting and raving more than your experience at the Albert Heijn, which is our Dutch grocery store. If I say that in a Boom Chicago show, the audience goes wild. If I come back to the States and I'm in Musical Armando and I was like, look at that guy in the Albert Heijn, they're going to be like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
But I didn't realize, like, in my first 2 weeks when I was improvising, how many things in the States I was referencing that they just had no idea what I was saying.
Interesting. Did you has some of the shows there that you've been in at Boom, you've been involved in writing them, right?
Yeah, so they do it very similarly to like Second City Main Stage. So every single year we have a main stage show that runs like essentially a full year, maybe a little bit shorter. I don't know because I'm still in my first year. We started writing it in February, then everything shut down and we just didn't write at all. We all were just like, everyone go live your dreams for a few months because we're freelance. We're just contract workers. So we came back and started writing it, I think, in mid-July, and we opened it in September. So it was grueling show process. Like we were at the theater every day from like 11 a.m. to like 2 o'clock in the morning, doing writing all day, then doing a show, and then doing a set where we would test out material for the audience and rewrite and re-improvise.
And are you following that same template of where you're like, in the meantime, while you're in process, you're doing the old show? And you're doing the scenes from the old like Second City does?
Somewhat. I mean, we kind of this time because of COVID had a unique situation that a lot of the time in the summer we were doing mostly improv shows. So we were mostly doing like a 2-act show that like the first act was all short form and the second act was all long form. And then there's a third act that we were testing out material. And then we were cycling through going from like a summer improv party to a best of Boom, which best of Boom was some short form games padded with some of the new material that we're going to put with our new show I call it the shit sandwich, like of like knowing things that will work and having them in the show, but you also like make sure that you are testing new stuff in there as well.
What is that kind of like process been like, or how have you kind of like honed your comedy in those shows? Are you gearing it more reference points to locals? Are you
well, because that's a good question.
You get a lot of tourists there at that show, right? It's a lot of out of town. You get a lot of out of towners coming to Boom.
Well, see, I've had such a super unique, So like the first 5 months I was here, every single weekend, it was like all tourists. But now we're really trying to focus on our Amsterdam audience because we had our borders closed. We were not having tourists for a really long time. So we got really creative. And it's so interesting because Boom has been around for 27 years, but everything has always just worked. So it's like the same as Second City. Like if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
But like once we had the downtime was when everyone kind of looked at everything and was like, now's the time we should like make some changes and like do what we want to do and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so it's been really interesting because we do have like certain parts that we like make Dutch jokes in every single show for the Dutch audiences. Like I know like 10 words in Dutch and I'll say them in my hosting, like, and they'll know that I'm so grossly American.
Wait,
because I can't.
What are these 10 words?
Oh, alsjeblieft is
I can't believe it.
You're welcome.
Oh, alsjeblieft.
Dankjewel is thank you.
I'm gonna see if I can figure it out by the German I know.
Okay. Laat je horen.
Lock your doors.
It's like I don't actually know what that one means. It's like make some noise or something.
You're saying it, you don't even know what it means.
I know, but I know a bunch of phrases like they say like "op is op" and "shungalunga yunga," and the best thing, Johnny, is that a knot in your hair is called a clit. That like killed me. I couldn't get over it for like 3 weeks.
Yes.
I have said it in so many scenes.
Just for your own gratification of
just getting away for my own yeah, exactly. I feel like the thing that has gotten me the most laughs for a Dutch audience has been saying the stores that are here. Like it's so weird. But our show, it's actually interesting because the director picks the theme of the show. Okay. So it's it's already pre-decided before the cast writes the new show. So the artistic director is like the last show that I came in and started, essentially I understudied for the last 3. I replaced someone in an already existing show. So I was at the tail end of the show that was called The Future Is Here, and it's slightly annoying, and it was all about artificial
I
intelligence and
saw that's the show
technology.
I saw. I saw half of it, and I had to like leave to get on an airplane. In the morning, I had to go to bed early. It
Hilarious.
was that the one
So I
with the Burger King sketch in it.
Yes, but that one we cycle through sketches. So like
Did they retire that?
they retired that before I
Good.
got here.
It was all Game of Thrones references except for it was like Burger King and McDonald's.
Yeah.
And
It's based on a web
going.
series they did, I think.
People ate it up, and I was like, cool.
Hilarious. Yeah, so I did a little, by the time I was in it, it was mostly improvised because we were kind of at the tail end of it. But this show is all about the 90s.
Oh, so that's the show you guys produced. I
Yeah,
didn't know if
so
that
the
was just
show was already named and was already like, our director was like, it's called sitcom. There's going to be some improvised sitcom, because everyone has like a short attention span. Like, we're going to focus on how like sitcoms are only 26 minutes long, and we're going to improvise one, and we're going to bring people nostalgia and like how we like take for granted all of these incredible, and how great we had it in the 90s. Like, because everyone was so happy, or if there were things that were bad, we just shoved them under the rug because we didn't talk about things the way we do now.
How great we pretended we had it.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing, isn't it, with the 90s? Because it's like, there is parts of the 90s that feel in a nostalgic way better, of like, I didn't have social media making me feel upset. And
so there's like a James Bond sketch that like the villain's technology keeps breaking down when he's trying to install a virus to take over the world because of bad internet speed.
Yes.
And there's a She's All That Jurassic Park sketch that I play a velociraptor. Yes. That someone has to try to make me the prom queen, but I'm a velociraptor. So it's like just a lot of like just super goofy. We have like a feminist rap about toys and how toys for girls were all either cooking or cleaning or being a princess. Like, they were so messed up for girls. Yep. So like everything has a pretty strong take of like what our experience was. And we have such a wide variety of ages in our cast. So we all were really at a different point in the 90s, a really different age. So we all experienced the 90s really differently. So that was a really interesting part when we were writing it. And because 2 guys are from the UK, they'd be like, in the 90s, the biggest game was this. And we're like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you getting a chance to do a lot of music in the show since you're so musically
So much.
inclined?
They've never done so much musical stuff.
Good for you.
Ever.
Because Matt's
in the
musical
entire
too,
world.
right?
What'd you say?
And Matt's musical as well.
Yeah, exactly.
He's in the same show with you, right?
Really, our whole cast has become quite musical. My first experience at Boom with these cast members was I actually taught them a musical improv workshop a year before I joined the cast. So they know how much I love it. So immediately, and Sasha Chodemacher, our music director, I worked super closely with him and taught with him before I even got hired. So we try to put me, like, I wrote the opening number for the show. We play like a version of dueling soundtracks. It's like 90s theme songs, and then we see blackout scenes based on the theme songs.
Okay.
So yeah, there's short form, there's long form, there's sketch, there's a little of everything. So it's really, really fun. Exhausting. It's an exhausting show, but
yeah, you sound like you're also just generally crazy busy over there between shows and workshops and hustle.
Yeah, it's been busy lately because November, December is when we have like the most like Dutch companies realize that they have like money in their budget, and then we get like hired for every holiday, everything. So it's just like a really busy time of the year for us, which is great because we haven't had work all year long. So yeah. And I'm writing new curriculum for the theater.
Dang, Stacey.
So we're launching a brand new curriculum and programming in January.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah. So it's kooky.
Do you feel like, are there any things about the Chicago scene that you miss? I mean, I guess everything right now because
So much,
it's all
yeah.
gone.
It's so interesting because I actually am so happy that I was not in Chicago when every single theater I've ever performed at closed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And same Improv Boston just closed their doors.
Oh,
So
permanently?
now pretty much every theater I've ever worked at is non-existent
It's
because
heartbreaking.
I did admittedly have a really tough time with the IO closing.
Yeah.
But I did learn a lot of lessons also because I posted that I was really sad about it and I got very attacked.
Yeah, I heard that.
From
I didn't actually read any of that because I'm seldomly on Facebook, but I heard that people like came after you for saying that you had a good time at IO.
Yeah, I think I just there was a lot going on at once and I think that I was just not super mindful of everyone's point of view.
I
I
see.
did in the post write that I know that it was not great for everyone
Yeah.
and I'm not discounting it, but I apologized and I learned a lot from the experience of mourning over an improv theater, and I will never do that again. So
Oh
like
boy.
when Second City was like, it's for sale, and I was like, girl can't do anything anymore. like, so
Also,
yeah, that's been really interesting. I miss musical Armando and Deltones
yeah.
so much. I miss playing with those people. I miss comedy sports a lot. Although there's a guy that I work with at Boom who's comedy sports from like the
Oh,
90s.
no way.
So it's like cute that we know
Very
some of the
cool.
same people.
It's
And
interesting with like these
yeah,
theaters, closing and whatnot, and the tumultuous, history they have and whatnot.
yeah,
And I think what's just also hard for people in general is just to be like, not everything's all good and not everything's all bad, and like
hmm,
doesn't mean I you can't celebrate the good and still call out the bad. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Because
It's
that's
a
life in
really
general,
great.
right? Because
Yeah, exactly.
everything's nuanced like that.
Yeah, it is really, really interesting. And so I've been kind of figuring out like navigating those situations. Yeah, it was really tough in the beginning, but now I'm just like, okay, I need to appreciate the things that I have and look at the opportunities and look forward. What am I going to do next? What create like I during COVID, I did so many things I've never done before because I just was like, I've been making a living doing this and now everything's gone. Like I have to figure I can't be an interior designer now. Like I have no skills.
Yes,
I
you
have
can. Look at that outfit. You know your colors.
I have no marketable skills other than pretending and producing.
But you're so good at
Um
those things. You're so good at those things.
and I love those things. So it's been nice because there's been a few moments where I've almost wanted to cry on stage because it's felt so much like Chicago to me. Like last week we did a show that was called Tragedy Plus Time, and it was in Armando, but every monologue was about death. And then we had all promised each other that after these monologues they're going to be sad and they're going to be dark, that we nothing is off the table, we're going to play to the height of our intelligence and we are going to do the goofiest craziest shit based on this super dark tragic material. And I just was monologizing and I was sobbing because of course I cry over everything, but I was telling a story about my friend Nick who had passed away early in my Chicago days, and I just felt the audience was so on my side
Mm,
for something that was quite emotional.
yeah.
And we've been doing such like high energy short form and this big sitcom show. And it was like, it felt like I was in Chicago where you could take those risks to do something quite emotional and the audience appreciated it
Oh,
because
interesting.
they're well versed in improv.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I felt like people really appreciated vulnerability and sincerity and honesty. And so I was like, oh my God, this feels like a show I would do in Chicago. And it felt really nice.
Do you think that when you're doing long form over there, because there's, I'm assuming, less exposure for audiences with long form, that a lot of it doesn't translate?
Well, you know what? to be honest, we don't do a ton of long
Oh,
form
okay.
here.
Gotcha.
So we have a weekly show that is essentially an Armando show, but that the cast tells all the monologues based on a suggestion. So that's our long form show of the week, but we've been trying to so we've had some community nights where I've produced a lot of more long form, but it's not and that's just specific to Boom Chicago. Easy Laughs is another theater here that they do English speaking comedy, and they do a little bit of long form and a little bit of short form. They do like a lot of like narrative or like improvised styles. And then there's a new theater that is like opening up that are two brilliant long form players, one guy from France and one woman that's Dutch. And they're doing some like really emotional, dramatic long form. So I think that still we're at the point where people need to you have to kind of over explain it a little bit more than like Chicago. You just do a Herald and you just like hope they get it.
Which also was probably our fault. We probably should have been over explaining it for every show in Chicago.
Yeah, exactly. But for here, it's
yeah.
because we do it in Armando, we're like, we're going to take a suggestion, we're going to tell a story, and then we're going to do scenes inspired by those stories. Is kind of just super easy to follow.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. So I think it's like we do accessible, like the most accessible long form formats so that people will like we do duo nights where they're just duos and they just get like 10 minutes to do whatever.
Okay.
And I've done like some really weird experimentals. I've done a few stage jams. I did a solo show where the tech just I did a solo show, but it was all inspired by light cues and sound cues for like 45 minutes. And the audience loved it because they were just like, we're watching some psychopath prance around the stage. So it's like
that theater's a little bit it's got some of that same building feeling of like the Mission, right? With like tall ceilings and like
yeah, our downstairs theater. We have an upstairs theater that's quite it's quite intimate, and it's like my favorite space in the world
better
to
for
play
improv
in.
And
it's great, but we haven't been there since March because it's not safe.
Oh,
we can't socially distance people up there.
Huh.
Because we've been struggling going back and forth with capacity numbers mostly. Like right now, we're at a 30-person capacity when our theater holds like 270 or something. So we can only have 30 people at shows, and we're not allowed to have our bar open. So it's a bring your own and only for 30 people. But the people that are coming to shows right now are so ready to be out of the house and to do something that it's like the best audiences I've ever performed.
So even though it's 30%, they're like, oh, that's
it's
cool.
Insane. It's not even 50%. Like it's like 15% of
and they're
our
all
audience.
And they're scattered like equal distance throughout that whole space.
Yeah, exactly.
Sweet.
Yeah.
What are the things that like you and Matt are just loving in general about being in this city? I feel like when I go to Germany, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. But one of the things I love the most is like all the bakeries instead of donut shops and
so
Starbucks.
Many.
It's like all bakeries where you can get like pretzel sandwiches and like savory things and coffee, which is more my speed than like a sugary thing. And I like that's like it's so silly, but it's like one of my favorite things about being in Germany. And maybe a good part of like Europe is like that too.
It's pretty much everywhere in Europe is like that
more
too.
Bakeries,
it's like to have a fresh croissant and an amazing. I mean, I haven't had a bad coffee like ever here. Like they just make good coffee.
Why don't we have more bakeries here? Like
it's so weird, isn't it?
Like the way we're talking about it, we're like, oh, fresh croissant, ooh, a fresh pretzel. It's not like people wouldn't lose their mind over that here in the States.
Yeah, and like the croissants at Starbucks are like garbage. You know what I mean? Like, ugh, so bad. We love every morning we get a coffee from our favorite coffee chain here. And
what's it called?
I think just like nature is like the biggest thing for us. Like we live in South in Zoud, it's called, and so it's a 20-minute cycle to Boom, which is obviously so easy and just never feels like 20 minutes. You feel like you just pop right there. But we are in between 3 parks. Amstel Park, which is right on the Amstel River with, like, a huge windmill, la, la, la,
Yeah.
la. Beatrix Park, which is just, like, this beautiful, like, huge pond and all these, like, little bridges and nooks and crannies and weeping willows. And then we have the entire I don't know if you visited and went to the forest, but we're right by Amsterdam
No, we didn't.
Sabos, which is, like, the big forest there. So, like, in the summer, like, it was disgusting at first because we went swimming and it's like a pond. I don't know what it is. It's gross water. But we just got tubes and floated around
Yeah.
for hours in the summer in this weird pond with other Dutch people.
You know what it is that's like I feel like that makes like cities pretty is when it's like curated the right way with like the city's pretty and there's nature interspersed. Like my favorite
Yeah.
part of New York is the
Central Park
the Central Park,
or
yeah.
High Line.
Like
Yeah.
being around that area and the juxtaposition of the buildings around it and knowing that you've got all this culture around you, but you're like still like tucked into this like
It's like a
curated
little
nature.
secret. You feel like you're in a secret.
Garden. A little secret
You're
garden.
in a secret garden. But it is really nice. I mean, the forest is beautiful and there's like weird animal like the freaking park that I walk through, I go for an hour morning walk every single day. And it's like the greatest thing that I've ever started doing in my life.
I
feel like
started
a
doing
different
that
person.
last winter. I would walk to like work every day for an hour, and it was like I was like, oh,
Unbelievable.
I unlocked something in my brain I didn't know I needed.
We walk to Boom all the time. It's an hour and 10 minutes. It's life changing.
Isn't it weird?
so-
It like puts you kind of in this like. It takes for me. It takes about like 30 to 45 minutes, and all of a sudden I just feel so good. I feel like kind of like. Almost like meditative. It's like that repetition of just like walking.
I go by myself every morning for 1 hour, and I have this park by my house that has, first of all, I know you've seen this video. There's a corgi horse.
No, I haven't.
It's a tiny miniature pony like little Sebastian, but I call him the corgi horse. And I go to visit him every single morning at 8:30.
Does he know you?
Every morning I go to see the corgi horse.
Stacey, does
There's
he know
donkeys. What'd you say?
Does he know you now?
Yeah, he knows me. Yeah. He definitely knows me. I go, good morning, corgi horse. But in that park, there's corgi horse, donkey, chickens, pheasants, wallabies, alpacas, emus. And it's not a zoo. It's just like, it's just a park.
It's a wild.
So
Is it
weird.
like called a wild animal park? Because they have those in Germany too. It's
No.
like wild Tierpark.
Oh, they do.
Wilde Tier.
The zoo here is actually really hilarious because I really was convinced that like Lincoln Park Zoo was like the best. But then I went to the Omaha Zoo and that one was like very cool.
Really?
But this one, it's like you can like touch the elephant. Like everything is so open. It was terrifying. I was like, you're giving them too much freedom. This is terrifying. But it's beautiful.
Do they do this thing? So when we were in Copenhagen, like
I love Copenhagen.
I love Copenhagen too. Everybody like in the morning, it's like cold weather where like before COVID, nobody would be outside having coffee or anything, but people are still out and about and they're all like sitting outside and they bring you these like cozy looking like flannel blankets and you drape them over your legs. Do they do that in Amsterdam?
I think there are some places that do that. I actually had that the most when I was in Estonia.
Oh.
When I was in Estonia, I performed in like this medieval church, and and the audience was in church pews, and they gave us like like warm cocoa and wrapped us in like fleece blankets.
That's pretty stinking amazing.
Yeah.
Stacey, like something about like doing comedy and being in Europe, it's just like it sounds like the dream.
It's really nice to not be in the States. I mean, it was really watching. It's when a big event happens, though, like watching the election stuff and when Biden won, like it was really sad to watch from here.
Why do you say it was sad? Like, what do you mean by that?
We didn't celebrate with Americans. You know what I mean?
I'm putting
like,
on my hat. My head's cold.
Put your hat on.
Okay,
Look at that tiny hat. Well, not only put a hat on, put some clothes on, you little t-shirt baby.
I have to have like I hate long sleeves whenever I'm like doing anything.
I don't think I've ever seen you in long
I
sleeves.
hate it. Or I just roll them up right away.
Yeah.
I like the feeling of things being by my wrist. I'm a big vest person for that
I'm
reason.
the same way though. I roll my sleeves all the way up, even though they're super, long.
Okay, wait. Why did it feel so specifically awful there?
It was just like weird to not celebrate with like a ton of
Oh
Americans. Like
yes,
it felt like, oh God, this is like a very patriotic moment that I'm living through
yes.
that I just am
Well,
like
Stacey, I
sitting in
felt that
my
way in Michigan.
ah,
Like I was
that's
in
hilarious.
Michigan, and like it was like when they declared it was for Biden. Like Matt like called me, and like he was in Andersonville, and Andersonville was like freaking out. Like people
Yeah,
were
I saw
cheering
the
and
Chicago
screaming.
pictures. I was so sad to not be
People
there.
like he Matt said that a a post office worker like drove by, and people just started like screaming and cheering for him, and like he was like
God.
soaking it up and stuff because like he was part of the process of delivering ballots. And I was
Yeah.
in Michigan just like knowing that
What?
probably everybody in my family, I don't know, I don't like to ask,
Yeah.
voted for
Yeah.
Trump. And
Oh
like
my God, that's so funny. You feel like you're in a different world. But I
yeah,
specifically wish I was in Chicago
I
because
do too.
I saw all of that. And I lived through moments like I was out and about walking home from a rehearsal like in 2009, like when I had just moved there, when the Blackhawks had won the Stanley Cup
Oh
and
yeah.
cars were honking. I went down to Wrigley Field when the Cubs had won. So
Yes,
like
yes,
I know how
that was
Chicago
so fun.
celebrates. Yeah.
I
Oh
got
my God,
Matt and
it's
I
the
got like we
best.
ran down Addison, so we're about a mile from
The
Wrigley Stadium.
best.
We ran down to Addison drunk, and like people were running from every direction towards the stadium,
Uh,
and because it was an away game,
yeah.
and uh, when we got there, like where that Taco Bell used to be, like right in the
Yeah.
corner, like
Wait, it's gone?
it's gone. Wasn't
Oh
that the
no.
nicest Taco Bell in the world?
No.
No, it
Not at
was. The
all.
people there
It
were
was so
so
gross, and I
nice.
always thought I was gonna get
No,
killed.
no, those people were so nice there. It was
It was
insane.
so murderous. It was so
I had a
murderous.
different experience at that Taco Bell. um, but as soon as we got in that front of that Taco Bell, like it stopped, and like the people were like stacked up to that area, and Matt and I got there, and like all of a sudden, like we felt like a push went through the crowd like a wave, and it
Ugh.
was the most like terrifying feeling of like there's so much force and mania in this crowd that this could turn in a second. And it felt like a movie where like one character knows or the audience knows that everything's about to go bad, but everyone else is
Yeah.
celebrating and like, yeah, yeah. And like the audience knows it's about to go bad. And I was like, felt it again, and I was like, Matt, we're getting out of here, because it was this kind of force that like if it turned into a stampede, there is nothing in my physical
Yeah.
power I could have done to protect myself.
And people were crazy that night
People
because the
were
game had
crazy.
gone so long. Everyone was wasted. People, I mean, if you read the like police blotter for the day after, like so many people climbed telephone poles.
Yes.
It's like was insane. And Matt and I watched it at Comedy Sports, and then the whole
Oh yeah,
group of
yeah,
us went
yeah.
to Wrigley, and it was just like I'll just never forget it because I mean, I just am a huge sports fan too. So to like be a part of that, I feel that way every time like my team wins and I get to watch it live.
Yeah.
There's just no greater feeling of like, yeah,
Yeah.
like you just want to like scream and hit someone even though you're not mad.
We jumped over a fence like to get out of the area, and
Oh
like
my
ran down an
God.
alley, and we like people were just openly like celebrating and like doing coke in the alley, and like
Ugh,
it was
Chicago,
insane.
my sweet girl. I miss her. I do. I just don't know. Like, that's a conversation that we have quite often. And it's so funny because the conversation, it's always the same questions and we never have answers. But
Yeah.
like, we just don't know what we're going to do after this.
But also everybody here, Stacey, feels the same way. You know
Yeah,
what I
so
mean?
I've seen so many people moving home from where they're from or
Yep.
just making the move to New York or LA and hoping for the best or
Yeah, because like there's no way to know what your prospects are in this
yeah.
city or anywhere, because even like so Matt and I are renovating a van
I know.
into
I'm
our
so
camper,
excited.
and he found out that he has the skill of busking and making good money doing it. He's
Wow,
not well,
that's
he knew he could
amazing.
play the cello, but he started busking this summer and was like, "Oh, I can actually make real money doing this." So,
Wow.
we're making this van and we're like, or I'm renovating it into a camper, which is a huge project, but also fun and overwhelming. And
Oh my God, you're married.
we're married. And anywho, part of our thought was we'll just go to warmer parts during the winter of the country, and Matt can busk, and then maybe when COVID's done, whether it's next year or whatever,
Yeah.
it would be fun to just be able to have that to tour and teach workshops. But also, I don't know how many theaters will be around to teach workshops at, and
Yeah.
even like theater departments at universities, like funding for things, and like it's just how could you
There's no way to know now, right
what that
now.
landscape will look like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very strange. It's like, it's a really good, it's sad, like I think really sad in the States, although the online community, like it's actually interesting because I actually think that what's happening right now online is that our community is actually growing quite bigger
Oh
without
wait, in this
us even
you mean just
all over the
universally?
world.
Okay.
All over the world. If people are willing to do online stuff, which a lot of people, which is really interesting, from like Chicago, New York, and LA are not really willing to do it online because it's
Yeah.
just not the same.
Yes.
Which, I
We've tasted the real
definitely, there
stuff.
are things that I don't like doing online, and there are things that I found are much easier online. Like, I think it's easier to teach writing online.
That
I
makes
think it's
sense.
easier to, do like podcasts and Q&As and stuff like that online.
Yeah.
Like there's just I've hosted like a bunch of like virtual events for companies. Like, it's interesting how many more opportunities we can have now because we also have another platform.
Yeah.
So it's like while I am still like there's nothing better than the power of live theater, it is spreading to the rest of the world in a much more rapid rate than it ever has.
Yep.
So there are students that are in third world countries that have never been able to travel because they didn't have the money or the means,
Yeah.
that now they, if they just have a internet connection, can learn how to
I know.
improvise.
Isn't that
So
wild?
like, so it is kind of exciting that even though, maybe people in the major cities are not realizing it because their bubble or what their theater is, I've seen so many like interesting online endeavors
Yeah.
and people playing with each other that have never been able to play with each other before, and things like that that I think are really, really exciting.
Which is interesting because I think it'll push I mean, this is my guess, that it'll push the throttle on decentralizing potentially the comedy scene as far as improv and sketch comedy goes. Because it was already getting to the point where it's like some of these smaller towns in the US or like smaller towns in Europe were starting to be taught by people who like trained at the best theaters
Right.
and performed at the best theaters, and it was starting to disseminate already into the rest of like the smaller cities. But I guess maybe this whole digital era of comedy is going to speed that up a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, like even my students online, like I've reached so many more students than I've ever had before because we don't have to be in the same time zones or,
Yeah.
like so it is fascinating in that regard. I think there's going to be a new appreciation, but I also think that like it would be smart for every theater to figure out how to do like 50% of their theater online.
I who's the person I want to talk to is the person who studied exclusively online during this time and then
Yeah.
at some point transitions to in person, and just kind of get a feel from them of like what that whole experience will feel like.
Yeah, that's so interesting because they probably though, if there is someone that has started during COVID and they have been able to study with some of the greatest improv instructors in the entire world, they probably have more experience and wealth of knowledge than some people that go through a year-long program because they're working with so many different people and taking so many different types of workshops. So maybe like different tools in their tool belt. So I think that would be really interesting to know, like, is there one person that has dedicated their life to online improv?
I mean, I've had a few students who that's been their only like only experience has just been online, and now they've been in it for a while.
For me, that's fascinating. But I am realizing that there are people that feel much more safe being in their homes and stuff
100%.
like that.
People have told me that they're like, if this goes bad, I can just close the laptop.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, that's your way out.
Yeah.
And scene and class.
Goodbye. Yeah.
Hey, speaking of, in the off chance that someone is listening to this who wants to take some improv classes, I don't know. Are there can people find you specifically either through Boom or through your independent like teaching workshops to take classes with you? Because Stacey is an amazing
I put everything
teacher.
on my professional Facebook page, which is just Stacey Smith Comedy, and then my website, staceysmithcomedy.com or stacejam.com. They both go to the same place.
Hell yeah.
Stace Jam.
Oh, Stace Jam. And Stace Jam is like your solo musical show that you do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is also kind of the way you started touring, especially as a teacher, was doing that show in conjunction with teaching musical workshops.
Yeah, it was, I did it totally by accident when I was in Boston because I invited a bunch of people to do a musical set and they all backed out. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm just doing this solo. So I did it and I realized like,
how did it go the first time?
Because I go to so many festivals and all these other instructors get to perform with the people from where they're from and they get to do their signature form.
Yeah.
And I always just have to play in like jam sets with all the other teachers, which I absolutely love, but I'm never like get a special like headline show. And so like it was so nice when I was able to start offering it because then it's just me and there's like I just need a musician. There's like no tech or anything to know about the show. So it's been really, really nice that I've had that because it makes me feel kind of like I finally can show what I've been teaching the entire week. Because a lot of the times I would go teach musical improv for like 7 days, and then there would not be a musician at the festival, no musical improv shows, and I would just improvise. And then, kind of sucks.
How do you, like, now that you've been doing those solo shows for a while with improv, how do you feel comfortability wise? Do you feel just as comfortable or more comfortable than improvising with other people? Or is it like the stakes feel a little bit more raised just because it's still you and the musician?
Yeah, no, I feel so comfortable. I feel like
that's awesome.
Yeah, sometimes I mean I don't want to sound like I do just feel so comfortable doing it by myself. Like it's more fun. It's so much work when I do it on my own. So that's the only thing is I walk off stage and I am exhausted and I don't want to talk to people.
And how long is your set?
All I want to do is drink water. What'd you say?
All I want to do is drink water. How long is your set?
So I'll do up to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And so it's just exhausting. It's emotionally exhausting, it's mentally exhausting, and it's physically exhausting. But there's also just when you're able to do something that's quite challenging and if it goes well, it's just so much more rewarding than anything in the world.
Yes.
But there's just not that second person to bounce ideas off of. So like you just have to trust yourself and you have to say yes to yourself. Even if you think your idea was stupid, you can't you can't get away from it. You just have to. Once you say something, you're like, damn it, Stacey, now that's the fucking thing. You can't go anywhere else.
And
you can't bail.
Are you doing like is there a structure like that's specific of like scenes returning?
Yeah, so it originated as I would do a musical Herald. So I would do an opening number, which would be like my organic opening, where I would set up 3 characters, and then I would do 1A, 2A, 3A, and then I would do like sometimes a group game or like a silly group song, and then I would see the second beat of all those scenes, and then I would do a closing number that would kind of be the third beat.
How often
I would fold them all.
How often doing a solo show do you like get to one of the beats and you're like, I have no idea, because you don't have that downtime to like process?
Yeah.
Does that happen to you?
Not so much. And it's weird because I never thought I was like super good at tracking Herald. I was just like, I'm going to step out because I know I haven't been here and hope everything goes well. But I think with music, it becomes a bit easier because you know what you're singing thematically. So it kind of makes it a bit easier, and it's only you. So like, if you do it wrong, you can like in the sometime during that scene, then call something back that you're like, I couldn't remember what it was, but now I've remembered 3 minutes later, and here it is. So that has definitely happened to me before.
I would love to at some point work up the courage to do a like a solo Ice Bear show.
Oh,
but I think it would just feel a little bit masturbatory without like, because like at least when you're doing a musical solo show, you're performing with the musician and you're singing. And Ice Bear's already so on.
I've done other solo formats that are super avant-garde and super weird balls just because I have the space and time to do it. So we have like experimental shows in Boston. We had this show that was called Comedy Lab that I would just like try weird. If I had a weird idea, I would just do it. If you did solo Ice Bear here, which would just be called Ice, like
no bear, just the ice.
People would love it if you just keep going to different things and following the fun. Like that would, I think, be super well received.
I think I'd be pretty sad though too without Eli.
I know, but we can do our show. Two ponies.
Two naughty ponies in a cage.
Nay. Which is funny because the word no in Dutch is nay. Nay.
Stacey, thank you for doing this podcast.
Oh my God,
you're so generous. You've been like one of the most generous people I know in the improv community with your time and your willingness to like do things for other people and like your energy and your spirit. And I just love that I got to sit and chat with you and hear a little bit about
we go so way back.
We do. 10 years,
oh my goodness. Yeah.
Probably 10.
It's gross. We're getting so old, but we look so good.
So young.
Oh my God, we look the best we've ever looked. And we have rings on our feet.
I don't have a bow in my hair, so I don't look as cute.
Goodbye, 2009. Thank you so much for having me. I love you and I miss you.
I love you too. And I miss you. Tell your dude, are you guys engaged?
Yeah.
Okay. I was trying to remember if it was fiance or
2 years.
I was trying to remember if it was fiance or husband at this point.
I call him my husband.
Tell
Matt.
Tell
our Matts that.
Yeah, Matts. Matts are good to have in your life, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think and love you. All the
I
best.
think and love you too.
All right, Stacey. Thanks
Bye,
again.
Johnny Cakes.
Dance in the middle of the night. Come on. Dance appetite. Dance in the middle of the night. Come on, dance. Wake up the